Oh, yeah, if I just sit down and rest for a few minutes, I'll have more energy to keep going. And that's when something else in my head screamed, we've seen that in movies. That's when everyone dies. And they're really cold. They're hypothermic. And they stop moving. They give up and go, I'm just going to rest and close my eyes for a second. And they never wake up. And so instantly, like, alarm bells just went off in my head of like, you are at a point where your brain is telling you to do stupid crap.
Hello and welcome into the Free Outside Show. Today's episode is magnificent, just like all of them. Couple things before we get started. Today I interviewed Jon Schwartz. He's a friend. We did the Ruby Crest Trail together. He has done the Pacific Crest Trail out and back, so it's called a Yo-Yo. We refer to that a few times in this. So he did 2,650 miles through hiking from Mexico to Canada. He hit the border, turned around, and came back. And he went through a ton of crazy stuff. So we get into that. It's a fun conversation. We also hit on when he was in the middle of nowhere, through hiking, no service, no idea what's going on, and the world changed forever. So that's pretty wild. You're going to want to wait to the end to hear about that. We also hit on like hiking in the Alps and all kinds of fun stuff like that. Another thing, I am taking on a few more athletes to coach. So pretty much marathon and above into ultra marathons, 50K, 50 mile, 100K, 100 mile, 200 mile, stage races, last person standing. After Grand to Grand, I've now done all of these things, and most of doing a stage race was to be able to coach people doing them in the future, and then that's also a lot of why I've tried out every distance. So if you're interested in coaching, just reach out either on Instagram, you can DM me, or you can email me, jeff@freeoutside.com. Also, you can send any questions or topics there, and I will try to hit them on the podcast because it is a fun, collaborative group we have going. I have a few in the hopper that you guys have sent, and I will get to them. So that's awesome. Also, in this episode with Jon, we hit on a few terms that for trail runners, non-thru hikers, I may have to explain. So here we go. The term Nero, it means a near zero day. So you hike nearly 0 miles. Say you're camped 4 miles outside of a town, you hike the 4 miles in, you stay the night in that town, you would call that a Nero. These are code word terms in the thru-hiking community. A zero, you may guess. It's when you hike 0 miles that day. So you get to a town, you stay the night, you stay all day in town, and you stay the next night, 0 miles. I think that's most of the things we hit on, Yo-Yo, Nero, Zero, but I should do a full episode on these terminology. Also, Jon's trail name is Airborne because he went airborne in while glissading down some ice. You can follow him on Instagram at Jon Schwartz. Links are down in the bio. Montana Meltdown is happening tomorrow by the time this comes out. So hopefully that goes well. And before we get into the episode, I have a fun fact. So despite how much bigger dinosaurs are than people, did you know that if there was a race between a human and a dinosaur, the human would win? Because all dinosaurs are dead. Duh. Or some people probably think they never existed anyways, so then it'd be especially easy to win. All right, let's get into the episode. Here is Jon Airborne Schwartz, because we love trail names. Let's get into it. All right, welcome Jon Airborne Schwartz to the podcast. Let's just get into it. What have you been up to lately since we last hiked the Ruby Crest Trail?
Last 2 weeks. Last week I went and did some trail work up in Los Padres on one of the trails I go to in the winter. And then a couple weeks before that, went and hiked most of the way across Catalina Islands. Had a very short window, so we got a ride, what would account for the first 12 miles of the trail to the airport, and then from there we walked all the way to the far side of the islands, and had a good time. It was nice and foggy. We were supposed to fly home on, my friend was going to come pick us up at his plane, and of course, it got so foggy that you couldn't land. So at the last minute, we had to get a ferry back to the original harbor.
Nice. Okay, I like this start because you got into trail work before you really did any through hiking, before you yo-yoed the PCT or went after the Great Western Loop. You were like doing trail work before you really through hiked, right?
Yeah, I had like barely even heard of the PCT. I mean, like my first trip ever was on the PCT in Yosemite. Didn't get very far. And then after that, it was just kind of in my world. I was living in Chico, California, in NorCal, and the trail's only about an hour away. And I had kind of gotten tired of just doing the regular spring break thing in college of just like going somewhere hot, drinking. So I decided to go to Trail Skills College with the PCCA up in Tahoe, and basically spent a week learning how to build trails and just trying to figure out like what was going on in terms of how trails are built, or like when you lose a trail and it's overgrown, like where would the trail might have gone is what I was kind of trying to figure out. Was like when you're navigating in those areas that just don't get any maintenance, sometimes you can kind of suss out the trail if you kind of just think like the original people did in like the 20s when most of these trails were all built.
So instead of spring break, you went to build trails. Did you go with anyone, or did you just go solo to this trails college?
Completely by myself. It was just me and like one other guy in his mid-20s, and then like a bunch of guys in their late 60s and ladies that were all the people that were instructors and just, retirees, I think, staying active and staying involved out there.
And then how does this lead into actually through hiking? Was it on your mind then, or were you still not a through hiker yet in your mind? Like you couldn't do it yet?
In my mind, up until 2014, 15, I legitimately thought like anybody who's doing the PCT was somebody that had like grown up in the wilderness and like was lived outdoorsy lifestyle and, had all these crazy skills that like me, somebody who grew up in the suburbs of Southern California, even though I was athletic physically, I just didn't think it was possible. And then,
well, don't ruin it for us. I mean, you still have to have lived off the land for 20 years before you can through hike, right?
Oh, that's exactly where the story leads. Me seeing some through hikers and eventually being like, "What? Like, if you guys could do this, I could do this." What's your story? You're just like a random guy from somewhere that decided to go do this YouTube video. And at that point, I was doing more like I didn't even know about any like gear. I was just like big box store was the only thing I thought was available, and was doing more like wandering, like hike out a day and a half, and then like spend 2 days to 3 days at base camp and kind of just like wander off trail and kind of explore. Emigrant wilderness is where I used to go mostly.
Totally. And then where does it go? How do you end up actually on a through hike? Because did you do the John Muir Trail first?
I would do a bunch of those little hikes out in Emigrant, and then I moved back to Southern California, and then I was like without any of my backpacking friends. And so for like 6 months, I was like trying to find someone to go with and convince somebody to drive down here or convince one of my friends that had a backpack to go, and I wasn't having any luck. So, and I had never backpacked alone, and this is 2014. And so I decided, well, Frank and I will just go, my dog. And so I went on like my first ever trip, and I was like, oh, well, it's kind of just like the same thing. You're just kind of, you got to stay busy because there's no one to really talk to. It's not like you're really hanging out at camp. And so that just led to a little bit longer days. And then backpacking in Golden Trout Wilderness with Frank, you've met Frank, so you know him. He wouldn't, like, we would hike like 15 miles, and I would be like, I'm done. I'm still wearing boots and carrying a heavy pack. I'm like, I am done. And Frank would be bouncing around still. And so I kept just trying to go to where he would be tired to kind of see where he would go. It's not a very fast dog in terms of sprinting, but he can kind of just walk forever.
Frank the
And then
Tank,
it
yeah.
turned into, yeah, and then it turned into me doing like a 27-mile day one time. And he was still like super happy and ready to go the next day. And that kind of got me thinking, like, maybe I could do something bigger. If I'm already at doing that many miles and I'm wearing boots and my feet hurt, and like my pack is heavy, I started learning from the thru hikers I would encounter up at like Chicken Spring Lake, or I would try to cross paths with them and just kind of pick their brains. And that's when I kind of decided if I can go through in June of 2017 during that huge snow year and kind of navigate the snow when it was kind of hardest and like the melt, I could probably do it early during the yo-yo and kind of do what I wanted my yo-yo to be, which is like be the first group to go through the Sierra at like a true wilderness experience of almost like backpack mountaineering mixture. And once I was able to do that, that was with Grant Barnett, who's a runner.
Yeah, he's a
And I
good
had met
runner.
him.
He doesn't even backpack
Yeah, we
anymore.
yeah we I met up with him and we ended up hiking together. And at that point, we were pushing, and I just thought like I could do that. I'm gonna have to. Before I'd never done anything over like 180 miles in one trip, and so I was just thinking, if I can just repeat that over and over again, I bet you I could do this. I just need to do it before life gets in the way, and I can no longer just dip out for a year.
Yeah. So
And
where did you or when did you start thinking about the idea of doing the PCT out and back, also called the yo-yo? When were you thinking that that might be something you could do, or even had the
2017.
idea to do it? Yeah.
2017. So I knew I had to take a year off work. So I wasn't thinking of the yo-yo as like, there's only been a few people that have done it. I was just thinking of it like, if it's my first trip, it'll be logistically easier for me to then retrace my steps and already have all my logistics dialed in. And I can kind of learn on the way north, start early to give myself enough time. And then by the time I have to push at true yo-yo pace, I would have learned enough and be ready to turn around and kind of go for a more serious adventure and kind of see what I could pull off after I'd adjusted. I hadn't run in like 9 years before that because I had hurt my foot really bad. So I was kind of figuring out hopefully if I can go slow enough in terms of not sprinting like in soccer, then it would work its way out.
Okay. So yeah, let's just dive into the yo-yo. So the plan is to start really early and just have the most time possible. And basically you have all this bonus time because you're starting earlier. And then what I also think is cool is your plan was to almost do two separate style thru hikes. One where you're getting the social thru hike style, and then you were going to turn around and pretty much sprint back to the beginning. Was that the plan from the start?
Yeah, that was, I like to make ambitious plans, but I also like to be realistic. So I make sure that whatever I'm putting out there, I'm going to actually realistically be able to complete, even though it is a stretch, the realistic stretch. So I knew my body was going to need to build up to it. Again, I hadn't been able to run. I was athletic, I'm still fit, but I wasn't, doing 25 miles a day every day. So I was supposed to start on the 14th or 15th of March, and then I ended work. And then like 3 days later, I was like, I'm just gonna go. Like, so I changed my permit to 2 days from then. I started on the 7th, and I couldn't be happier with that choice because I ended up meeting, a lot of people I met along the way, and I don't think we necessarily would have crossed paths at that time or had that experience. So I started that early because at that time it was like something crazy, like in the teens snowpack percentage. Like our rain for Southern California was like non-existent. We hadn't had really much at all. And then 2 days after I got on trail, we had a miracle March, and it rained like every every 3 days or every 4 days would rain 2, and then 2 days on, 2 days off for the first 250 miles, 300 miles.
Yeah, in Tahoe, they still talk about Miracle March because it snowed so much in a ski season that they thought was going to be dead.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy how much. I mean, when we went through San Jacinto, it was actually like closed. The back route along the ridge was closed still from that fire before. But walking along the Fuller Ridge was, snow up to your knees, like fresh powder from the night before, no tracks. It was like a winter wonderland, and so we got like so much. That was actually one of the best things because that really helped me and one of the other guys I was with that had a lot of snow experience. Like he had actually like more ice and like gnarlier stuff than I did. To kind of figure out like, hey guys, like, are you gonna, if you're gonna enter the Sierra in April, like you're gonna have to be ready, and everyone's gonna have to be ready because you can't really leave anybody behind, and you really can't like slow down too much because of the time of day and the outgoing. So
did you hike with the same people for most of the start of the PCT, even though you're doing a yo-yo?
Yeah, so I met a kid, a 19-year-old tip in Virginia on the first day, and we ended up camping next to each other, and then we saw each other again the next day, and then we camped again. Me and him kind of stayed together for, I think we spent a few days apart here and there, all the way until like past Tahoe, and he had just past Tahoe. And so
was there a group?
Sorry.
Oh, was
yeah. So now after that we met a few people here and there, and then we entered the Sierra with like 5 of us, and then we picked up 3 more at Mount Whitney, and then all of us 8 went through the Sierra together.
And you guys were like the first ones through, right?
Yeah, there was somebody that had bailed out at, I want to say, Bishop Pass before Muir. And he was just kind of like on like, it seemed like he was, that's extremely risky to me. If you're climbing Whitney in mid to late April and by yourself out there, that's just crazy to me. In terms of, I'm pretty crazy, but I wouldn't go that early without, at least 3 people. So we made a strong group. We trained up. We got everybody gear. Everybody had crampons or spikes and axes. And we kind of did a little bit of self-arrest training on some hills before we kind of got up to the big passes, because, it was pretty intense. We were chopping steps for like hours on some of the passes. So it was like legit mountaineering.
No kidding. And so is it still snowing at this time too? Is more snow falling, or did you escape most of the storms?
So we hit a couple windows. So we got out. We went from Tyndall Creek up and over Forester, and then out Kearsarge. And that was that's a hard day on trail. It was a really hard day in powder. And so, especially with chopping, the chute was pretty gnarly, and the couple switchbacks after the chute on Forester Pass were probably the hardest part. It was like almost vertical or at the top for a while.
Yeah, are you guys like backing down, like pretty much climbing up and down the chute and stuff like that too, or the steps on the backside too? Is it that steep? Because the whole trail's got to be covered for miles on each side of every pass.
Yeah, the chute it had to have steps chopped in. It was just like pure ice. So it was like our steps were like enough to get like half of the grip of your crampons, so like one whole side could get on, and then you just try to get a good pitch on your ass so that you slip. And it was intense. But sorry, your original question was about
just like the weather's still coming down out there.
So when we got out that day, we rushed really hard on that long day to get out because there was a storm coming. We went to Bishop and then ended up staying like 2.5 days in Bishop because a big storm came in, dumped like a few feet of snow, and then we kind of waited a day for it to settle. Because in that early season, if you ever looked at like the north side of Glen Tass above the trail, that kind of like not even really scree or talus, it's like scree, so it's like smaller and looser.
Yeah.
It just looks like an avalanche waiting to happen. The sun hits it and it gets all like glistening. And, I've heard of early season, like mini avalanches there in the past. So, we kind of waited a day to let things settle out there a little bit before we went out.
Well, there's no trees for like 3/4 to a mile leading up to it. So it's obvious that there are some pretty big avalanches or destruction.
Yeah, exactly. And so that morning we got up at like 1 a.m. and got over Kearsarge as fast as we could, and then got over Glen Pass not too long after sunrise, maybe like an hour and a half after sunrise. And we were post-holing, almost to our knees, and spreading out. That's where one of like my favorite pictures from the whole trail came from, just like us zigzagging down that north side of Glen. And we all got to the bottom, and I was just like, me and a couple other guys were like, oh my gosh, so happy we're all down from that. And then a few of the people just had no idea what the danger we were just in, and they were like stomping around. I'm like, hey, don't break anything that we can break on the crust of the snow, like.
Totally.
Oh god. And then we got to Mammoth. We got one little day of sprinkles, nothing bad. We made it to Mammoth. And then on our way out of Mammoth, it rained for like 6.5 days straight, all the way to Sandy Meadows North. Like almost every day, at some point, it would rain or be so cloudy that it was like you were in it. Like it was thick to breathe. Everything was wet. Yeah, that was. It wasn't that cold though. That was the weird thing. It was kind of a warmer storm, so it was raining on this, not snowing at that point.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we got more. Yeah, it from there all the way to Tahoe, it kind of.
So for like Pinchot, Mather, and Muir passes, what's like the schedule when you're going to be post-holing all day? Are you getting up at like 2 a.m. or how? And then are you camping just at the lowest spot? How are you attacking these 12,000 foot passes?
Try to time them so we're getting like to the base right at like dawn. So try to get there so then you're climbing it where you can see better, but you're not waiting too long. Some of them it was like you almost wanted it to be a little bit softer, but then that early season you really don't. It's not settled enough to be walking on such slushy stuff. So we were just trying to get up and over and then down out of the deepest snow on the north side as early as possible, because we were stopping by 11 a.m. noon. Yeah. Just because we were down, and then anything going up again was like instant plunge all the way through. And it was funny. We were sending one of the strongest guys I've ever hiked with. Was leading the way most of the time, and he was just a bigger, stronger guy, and so he weighed more, and so he would walk and post hole, and then all of us would just splinter around it and go around it and not post hole. He would get so upset because we were all just laughing, like, I think we had to stop because he's starting to go through.
Yeah, he's like your scout for if the snow can hold you or not.
Yeah, hell, we're good to go. Or did hold them. Let's go around that hole.
Yeah. And like the trail, how much are you seeing any of the trail? Like in the valleys, is the trail visible, or are you camped on snow?
Yeah, we have like a few miles at the bottom of each. So once we get down, we'll have a few miles. Rare, really wet. Like it's either this trail, it's a river most of the time. Yeah. There was only a few spots that were pretty decent, but besides that, you're wet from the snow or you're wet from walking in a river.
Yeah, so, a little more intense than most people's through hike, that's for sure.
Yeah, and we hadn't really been thinking about bugs or anything because we didn't have bugs at all in the Sierra most of the time.
Yeah.
We were sleeping around snow. Like, we didn't sleep on snow ever in the Sierra, but we were sleeping with like patches all around us.
Yeah.
Just finding a little bit of ground. But one night, where was that? It was like right before Paiute Pass Trail.
Okay. Yeah.
That like second bridge of those like 3 bridges in a row. We camped down by the river, and guys were like, "I'm just gonna cowboy camp." I'm like, "I know we're low enough. I see some bugs," and they're like, "It's been fine." And 2 guys woke up. I have a picture of it, and their faces were so swollen because their faces just got eaten up all night long. They were always making fun of me for setting up my tent the night before. And I was like, I don't know, we're kind of low. I'm not dealing with that.
The only one not
Those
swollen.
the first mosquitoes of the year. Like, those mosquitoes are hungry.
Yeah, they haven't eaten in months.
Yeah.
Ever. Yeah. So
Yeah,
when
they
do you have to start turning it on and upping the mileage in order to? Did you have like a date you wanted to get to the northern terminus before you turned around?
Yeah, like August 1st was kind of my date, and then it just kept clicking out the miles per day I'd have to do to make it there by August 1st, because I was like 0 with the friends, Nero in town.
Yeah.
And so I was just doing these calculations in my head, and like once it got to like over 30 miles a day, I was gonna have to say goodbye. And I kind of almost had like a false attempt at leaving, where right after Ashland, they stopped like 4 miles in from the road. This is Camp Here, there's water. And I was like, fuck. I can't do a 4-mile day after a 00. And so I went ahead, and then I was still wearing boots at that point, and my feet just exploded that day. And so 2 of my friends ended up catching up with me, and we ended up hiking into Bend. And then once I got into Bend, I went to REI and got Hokas. And then I told my friend basically like, hey, if you want to keep up with me, like I'm gonna, like, I gotta hit this amount of miles per day. And so he was like, okay, we could do that. And so we were doing like 26 or 27 miles a day. And then I got just past Cascade Locks. We went to Trout Lake. Is that the town? No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Trout Lake.
Yeah, so we went to Trout Lake, and went to that store, and we were like sitting on the back, and he came outside, and he's like, "Here, I bought you a beer," and I was like, "Oh crap," because you never buy anyone a beer, and so I knew something was up. And he was like, "Hey man, I think I'm gonna stay behind and wait for people that are like a day behind, and kind of let you go ahead." And I was like, "Oh, all right, like it's game time." Like, it was all fun and games. We called it like the NorCal Brewery Tour, where every town we'd go into, we'd just go hang out at the brewery, and all hang out, get Airbnb, do the biggest trail life type smart, like fun stuff you can do. And then, then it got real serious, but not in a bad way. And like, I was kind of ready for it. I felt like I was in good enough shape to really just put the pedal to the metal and just see what I can do. I made it. I started doing good miles, mid 30s, low 30s consistently every day, not taking days off. And then in Washington, I kind of miscalculated my food and how hard the section would be, and just how hot it was. I mean, it was so hot. I didn't expect it to be like almost in the 90s out there. Like, I was just dying.
This is 2018,
and,
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the heat wave where I was in Glacier and it set a record, I think, with the same heat.
Dude, it was great. Like, I remember doing that climb after Micah Lake in Glacier Peak.
Mm-hmm.
That huge climb that's kind of exposed to the
It's like 4,000 feet. Yeah.
Dude, and just like absolutely dying on it and stopping at every little creek that would come on the switchback. Like, every time I'd do up the switchback, I'd stop and soak myself, eat as many berries as possible.
Yeah.
And then I lost quite a bit of weight during that section. And that kind of became the story of my trips for a little bit. Of like, all I was thinking was like, I couldn't even, like, I was just a zombie. I couldn't really talk much. I was snapping in the dirt. Like every time I stop, I would just lay down in the dirt, leave my face on it, and then like wake up, walk till like 11 p.m. because I needed to make the miles, but I was just so tired and going so slow. And then I find that all I was saying was like August 1st. Like if I can just get there, then I can afford to take a day off. I can make that up on the way back. And so I made it there at like 9:05 p.m. or something like that on August 1st. And
Wow. And you're feeling awful, and you know you have to turn around and go back?
I'm down to like maybe like 145 pounds, like 6'2.5". Like I was a skeleton. You could like see my heart beating in my chest. Like I had like no like muscle mass left.
And just 2,600 miles and 500,000 feet of elevation gain to go. No big deal.
Yeah, just halfway there. Yeah, this is the halfway point. You're doing well, aren't you?
Yeah.
And so I made it back to Hart's Pass, and then there was a fire closure, and I ended up going into Mazama to Ravenstongs, and there was like a trail angel guy that was there, and I mean we made these pancakes that were so full of peanut butter they didn't even like turn into pancakes. They were just like all like runny. They were like loose because of all the fat in the peanut butter. And I got a dozen eggs and a pound of cheese and ate all that like one day, and was just like sitting there. I was like in like starvation mode, and I met Scott Williamson there. So that was cool. I think he was probably looking at me like, I don't know, buddy.
Yeah, how
looking
has he done it? Has he done it like twice, the out and back yo-yo? And he's had the record too a couple times.
Yeah, he's had the record. He's done it, I think, like 14 or 15 times. It could be more than that. I don't want to sound short. And then I actually ran into him twice. I ran into him at Mazama at Ravenstongs. And then I saw him at Stevens Pass, and he came and he's like, hey, yeah, I was trying to catch you for the last 2 days because he knew where we were going. We had talked about it. And he was out doing like random stuff, just like wandering on back trails. And so that was a pretty cool moment to be like, oh, you were trying to catch me, and it took you longer than like 3 hours.
Yeah.
And then I went into the Dismores. And some guy was there, and I brought all my groceries. And then when I was trying to leave, that guy had already left, and he had swiped my bag of all my refrigerator like food that I take. So, like, if you know me, if I lose all of my cheese and my pepperoni, and like that's the heart of my meals. Like that's like 2 pounds of cheese. It's like, and then it's a lot of calories. So I was just sitting there like, what do I do? Like I was kind of just exhausted too. Like I wasn't, when you get down to that low body fat, I could really feel like you don't think quickly anymore.
Yeah.
Like and so I was just like, oh, I guess I need to go to the store and do that. And then I was just kind of like stressing about like, I gotta spend more money. I just bought all that. That was expensive because I bought it at a small store. Just, just being frustrated, also exhausted. Yeah. And then Scott basically dumped out his bag that he was about to cut out with on his trip, and was like, and we pieced together replacement calories for me. And and he basically sacrificed his full resupply, and so I could get back on trail to try to complete my trip. Like, and that was
it's like the passing of the torch or something. One yo-yo PCT to another.
It was like a trail hero. And like, helping you out your time of need, and like saying like, you got it, buddy, and then give me a pat on the back. I was like, yeah, look at that, he's patting me on the back.
He like, get back out there, buddy, you got it.
Yeah. I actually recently saw him at Dogga Softly's memorial service. And it was great to catch up with him again. He's an awesome guy. Of course, he showed up like 2 hours early just to help set up and carry everything around. And couldn't say good enough things about a guy that doesn't have a lot of presence online.
No, and modern people don't know anything about him, I don't think.
Yeah. He is a true legend.
Yeah, he's like one of the true legends that popularized the trail, and FKTs came up with the idea of yo-yos and stuff. Pretty crazy.
And that's where it was so cool just to even have him be any part of it at all. And,
Yeah.
And at that point, I started to regain strength. I think I had just adapted. I was also very lonely. I hadn't been alone the whole time. And so all of a sudden, I was pushing harder. I had all this weight loss. I was kind of struggling physically. And I was ahead of most of the Nobos. I mean,
So
you were ahead of me, so
you weren't seeing anyone
know,
coming
so
back? You weren't crossing paths yet with anybody?
I had
Not really.
already. So on the way north, I was pretty lonely. And then on the way back, I started to see a few people. And then, once I got past, there was a reroute through Spahikin because of the fire. We had to go to Holden Village.
Okay.
And on that reroute, I ran into my whole trail family.
Cool.
And so we stopped for a few minutes, and then I had to keep going. And then, I saw people, but not people I really knew. It became this weird thing where, I was, in a daze of just being exhausted, and then, people would be like, "Oh, you the guy Yo-Yo?" And I would just be like, "I can't talk. Brain hurts." And just keep going. Because when you stop at somewhere and somebody else recognizes you, and then they're just, asking you questions, I don't always mind it, but sometimes I'm just so tired. I'm like, can you just, ask me what's wrong? Or... I don't know. Just some basic conversation.
Yeah, it's like, can I just be on can I just be on autopilot for this conversation right now? And they're only going to last 1 or 2 minutes, so it's hard to know what to even talk about. It's like, how are you doing? It's like, well, I have the 2-hour answer or the 10-second answer.
Yeah. Or you can just look at me. I'm dirty as hell. I'm so skinny. I'm like a zombie. My eyes are barely open. It's gone well. I'm still going.
Yeah.
And then
still have 2,000 miles to go. No big deal.
Yeah. And through Washington on the way south, I think I averaged something like 37 and a half.
Cool.
So I was struggling. I was still putting in big days, but I was putting it. There was nothing. I wasn't hanging out. I was out there trying to see because for me, the biggest obstacle, I mean, obviously the biggest one is getting through the Sierra before winter. But there were many obstacles I thought I had before then. Getting through Washington twice in a row is a big obstacle. And at the new speed, I knew it was going to be somewhat harder, even though I was more familiar with it. So I figured if I could just get to trail days, it would kind of give me a morale boost. I would see a lot of people I knew were going to be there. And if I could get there by trail, that would be such a big accomplishment. So I kind of used I wouldn't call it arbitrary because there was a reason for it, but it was also I just made up a freaking goal and then tried to go for it.
Same with August 1st. I think you just have to put those out there for a thru hike to work because it's too big of a thought to think of the whole yo-yo. But just when you got to Washington still being I got to get north by August 1st, that's kind of what you make your whole life revolve around, these arbitrary goals.
And if you don't set that goal, then, hey, the second's not a big deal. It's one day after.
Yep.
And then, hey, it's the third. Let's go hang out. And then, I had to set a goal because I had been ticking up my mileage per day of how much I needed to do hanging out with my friends. So at that point, I was like, this is the thing. And once it hits this, sorry, guys. But then after that, I was feeling strong. Kept going. Still doing, mid to high 30s, just low 40s, pretty consistently. When I got to Shelter Cove on the way south, it was my birthday, so I woke up, had a breakfast burrito, charged all my stuff, and packed out a burrito. And then there's a few lakes once you get 10, 12 miles in.
Totally, yeah.
There's a lake off to your side that drops down pretty good below trail on your left when you're going south. And there's a nice little sandy beach down there. I was like, it's my birthday, so I went down there, took off my shoes, swam for a bit, ate the extra burrito, and just kind of hung out. And I had been pushing so hard, and it was my birthday. And then usually in every year before that, I had done more miles than my age.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I was like, I feel like I'm done enough miles before and after. I think I should take my actual birthday and maybe chill a little bit. And so, yeah, I did that, and it was good. I think it really helped me just get some meals in without expending like, almost 10,000 calories or something, whatever I was doing per day.
Yeah, when you're pushing this many miles a day, are you getting like anxious? Like, I got to hit 10 miles by 9 or 10 a.m. I got to hit 20 miles by 1 or 2. Are you like breaking up your day like that, and you're almost like feeling pressure to hit those numbers?
I mean, I wish I was more like that.
Yeah.
Because I can be of the mindset, which is kind of why I had to set that August 1st date of like, I'll just hike longer. Almost hiking at like 3 hours when it's dark. We get to hang out here in the sun, and but then you started just getting in a routine where you do start to feel a little bit like, if I do that too much, eventually it pushes me into the next day, or it starts to ruin the next day. And honestly, I was sleeping so hard and going to bed at an early enough time. I was ready to get up and take a dump and go pee and like eat more. I was like waking up starving.
Yeah.
And so at like some point, like 4:30, 4 o'clock, I was already rolling around. And so I would get packed up by first light. Before that, I would hike by headland sometimes, pack up by headland pretty much most nights, especially once we got into like mid to late August, and the days are just a little bit shorter.
Yeah. Okay, let's fast forward to the Sierra. So now you go through again. Did you beat winter, or what kind of, because it's got to be starting to get cold by the time you hit the Sierra in September, probably?
Yeah, I got my first cold in like Lassen, and then just north of that, I started to have a couple cold mornings, and I realized, things were changing. My parents met me in Sonora,
Sweet.
Sonora Pass, and took me down to Bridgeport, and got all my rain gear, winter gear. Made it through northern Yosemite, no problem. Got a really bad windstorm on Donahue that night. I think had the worst night's sleep ever. And then
Did you camp on the pass?
No sleep. No, you know that little creek crossing where those couple of trees are. Before you actually go up to the last bit of the pass.
Yep. Yeah, I know exactly where it is.
I just tucked in there because it was so bad. I was trying to get over the pass. And then I ended up going into Mammoth the next day, staying with a family friend. And I should have let him know that when I was doing my laundry that if don't put my wool gloves in the dryer. And so I didn't even think about that. Again, I was kind of spacey at because it's just tiredness. And so I got on trail. I was like, I got some storms coming. Let's just pound through the John Muir high pass section and just get this done. I've been here so many times in the last couple of years. And so I hiked into the dark. I wake up. It's hitting rain a little bit. I get packed up. I just start going. I'm like, I'm just going to get over Solar Pass. And then kind of realized that my rain jacket, I hadn't been in rain for so long. I hadn't had rain since the Sierra on the way north. I had maybe one day of rain in Washington. That was it. And so my rain jacket has just been worn through and was just being wetted out within minutes. And so I was soaked. It was like sleet, frozen rain. It wasn't quite like snow.
You weigh nothing. You have no body fat insulating you.
And that's the thing is, in the past, I've been able to just push harder and hike faster, and I can warm myself up. I was still able to push, but I didn't think I didn't have the mass to actually keep myself warm. And so I tried to put on my gloves. They wouldn't fit. I mean, I was trying to stretch them out with everything possible. I was just trying to rip them apart and get my hands inside. Couldn't even get my fingers inside. And so my hands went numb. And, I tried putting them in pants. I tried putting them in bags, and they were just going. And then it just slowly freeze up to my core. And I was just feeling my arms just like tingling and going numb. And I was fuck, like, just get over it. Just get over the pass and we'll be fine. And so she kept pushing. And then right before I got to the top of the pass, I felt like my core get pulled. And I like felt like, I don't know, it's like energy wise and just like shutting down a little bit. And so again, I was just like push. And so I was going, and then all of a sudden I was like stumbling down the trail, not thinking clearly.
One
and then,
second, someone's at my door. I gotta answer it.
awesome.
Political person.
So yeah, so I was with that. I started stumbling. I was kind of just like, if you're at like altitude sickness, it feels kind of similar in terms of like the loopiness, the loss of coordination. And then I started thinking like, I just need to sit down for a few minutes. If I just sit down and rest for a few minutes, I'll have more energy to keep going. And that's when something else in my head screamed, we've seen that in movies, that's when everyone dies, and they're really cold, they're hypothermic, and they stop moving, they give up and go, I'm just going to rest and close my eyes for a second, and they never wake up. And so instantly, like, alarm bells just went off in my head of like, you are at a point where your brain is telling you to do some stupid crap. And so I stumbled a little bit longer until I could find a spot to flat enough to just sit in my tent right next to the trail. And my hands were so frozen and like white and pale that it took me, like I was trying to fumble with my poles and to get the clip over the poles, and I had to use like these parts of my hands to do it because my fingers weren't like articulating at all. So it took me like 15 minutes to set up my tent, which normally takes me like 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like struggling. And then I finally got everything on.
Are you scared and worrying at this point? Like,
I think I'm gonna die. Like, I think it was the furthest it's ever. Like it went from me being like, oh, I should probably stop, to then like, once I was stopped and setting up tent, it just cascaded to being like really bad. Like I was shaking, like my whole body was like shaking, and then I get in, I get my stuff set up, I get inside the tent, and I'm just convulsing and like shaking down, like my whole, like my abs hurt, my lower back is killing me, and then I'm trying to, like, I'm starting to nod off, and I'm not warmed up yet.
Yeah.
I'm in my quilt, I'm trying to get warm, and then I'm kind of like, it sounds dramatic, but like it was pushing the air through and making a noise was helping me like stay auditorily awake and like make my body do something. And I was like yelling, like trying to stay awake and trying to keep myself awake. And like I was scared. I thought I was gonna die. Like I thought I was passing out. I was trying to stay awake. I couldn't stay awake. And then I passed out, but my dream was me still yelling, still trying to stay awake.
Oh my gosh.
And then like something just like clicked in my head, and then I just woke up and I was like, I rolled over and was like touching the wall of my tent, just full on, just like shivering so bad. And then I just started feeling my body just like stop shivering. And I started just feeling like my body going like, that's enough. Like we can't keep doing this. If you have no energy, you have nothing. You have no body fat. We can burn at this point. When you're shivering like that, you're burning like 5x the calories that you do not shivering.
Yeah, because you're just trying to warm yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. And so at that point, I just woke up like so like the fear of like imminent death. And so I scrambled through my bag with these frozen claws, and found some bars, and then was ripping them open like this with my teeth and pushing the bar between my hands, and just started just eating as much food as I possibly could. And after about 15 minutes, I can start to see my core start to warm up. I was already metabolized. My body, I mean, you have seen me, like my body does not retain calories. It just literally puts off heat like, as soon as I eat. So I instantly started warming up, and there's just like a sense of like, holy crap, it's over. And then all of a sudden, the adrenaline just wore off, and I was so mentally exhausted because my adrenaline was just almost keeping me alive for a few hours. And yeah, and then I slept for a few hours, woke up 3 hours before dark, and was like, all right, well, I'm in the middle of nowhere. Like, I need to find a plan that works for me and my equipment and the situation I'm in. And so I pulled out my HeatReach and I sent out 3 weather reports for where I'm at, halfway point. The weather was low or high. Sometimes it's past, sometimes it's the valley in between. At this point, it was down below. And then where I was going to camp the next day. And then just try to compare the two, try to put together an idea of what the weather looks like between the two and at each elevation. And when those storms were coming. Well, the storms were coming during the day. So I got up after the hypothermia, hiked about 2 hours in the dark, so like 5 hours total. I knew there was a sheltered campsite I had seen on the way north that was in a bunch of trees and wouldn't have snow and wasn't that wet. So I went and stayed there the night and had to get up very early. I got up at like 3:30. I only got a few hours of sleep after that because the storm was coming. I had to get up, get over the next pass, get down to like where Muir Trail Ranch is, and then I was just gonna try to push my body as hard as I could before the next storm comes and just see where I can make it. And it was behind me the whole day, like coming, and I was just using it as motivation, like something chasing me, and I made it to where I thought I could get to. It wasn't on me yet, so I was like, next bridge, let's get there. Pushed a few more miles. It's not there. I can get the climb and get through Evolution Creek and then get north. Me, you have stopped at that campsite before that.
Yeah.
We're talking north of there or south of there. And so I pushed all the way to that campsite, and then it started snowing on me like right after I got my tent set up. and it wasn't dark. It was still late afternoon. And so I just sat in my tent and turned on the podcast. And I brought one extra day of food, just knowing the season and what could happen if I got bogged down. I didn't want to lose more weight. So I basically was like, all right, well, that's the shivering was my extra day of food that I needed.
Yeah.
So I just sat there and just tried to recover, ate. And then woke up the next day and there was a good, Ruby Mountains amount of snow, a good 4, 5, 6 inches of snow in places. And then, went over Muir Pass. It was honestly a very beautiful day. It was.
The snow makes it prettier. Gorgeous. Even in the Ruby Crest.
Snow makes it prettier when it's not deep. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'll think of snow all day. The snow is so much better than rain. And then frozen rain.
Yeah.
Especially that time of year where it just stays cold.
Yeah.
And then after that, I made it. I met the Strawbridges. And then my buddy met me at Kearsarge, down by the trail. So not at Kearsarge Pass, but down with the Kearsarge Trail.
Onion Valley, yeah.
Yeah. No, on trail.
Oh, okay.
He hiked over Kearsarge and met me on trail. And brought me a full resupply of 12 sausages and all kinds of. Because once it got cold, I was like, bring me all the meats, bring me all the cheeses, bring me all the things that go bad.
Yeah, autumn food. Yeah,
exactly. And then we ended up teaming up or meeting a couple girls on the way to Forester. And I kind of warned them, hey, there's a big storm coming. You should get over now and let's hang out down here for 2 hours. And so we ended up going over, and then got snowed on that whole night. It got so cold that with all my stuff on, this huge fire with everybody's having, I just could not stay warm. So I had to go to bed while everyone else was able to just hang out. It wasn't seeming to be that cold for them. And I was just breathing. And so went to bed, and then the next day they were going to go do Whitney, and I told them I will. My buddy was going to go with them. They were going to give a ride to his car and then meet us at Kennedy Meadows. And I was again, creating some arbitrary goal where like, hey, if I can just get this Sierra thing done, I'll be safe. So I can take a couple days off, you know,
Totally.
wait. And so I use that as motivation to really push to get all over the Candy Meadows, and had probably one of the worst night's sleep I ever had at Chicken Spring Lake. And also one of the best days after that followed a terrible night's sleep, like almost no sleep because it can be very windy at that place.
Yeah.
And in the fall, it was not good. And just woke up with sand all over me inside my tent. And then, but that next day, that area is pretty cruisy and it's pretty, it's very remote. There's like nobody out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like you're wandering through, not much.
Yeah.
Then,
It feels like no one's ever been there. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, me and you have been to Golden Trout quite a bit. So like, yeah, it feels like you're the only people out in the whole wilderness area every time you're there.
It's wild. Yeah. Especially how we explore, where we just like take a meadow into the middle of nowhere, and it's like hints of trail. At some point, there might have been a trail.
There's supposed to be a trail on the other side of this 2-mile one.
Yeah, maybe we'll find it. Maybe we won't.
Avoid the swamp as much as possible.
Yeah, the one that claims your shoes.
Snowy swamp. That's called Summit Meadow.
Yeah, let's just wrap up the story. Are you, once you get through the Sierra, are you pretty much set? Do you just get to back off an itinerary? Are you feeling pretty good about it? Can you just cruise it to the end?
I had a wedding to get to. So I took 5 days off. My back was killing me. I Candy Meadows, I had a little bit to drink and fell asleep in a car, like my friend's passenger seat. Like we were just with like the seat back, and I just didn't do well for like my glute, my back. So my back was bothering me. So I got off trail a few days early. But I had the time now. The weather window was done. So I got off, rented, ate a bunch, went to the wedding, got back on trail, and then I felt like a million times better. I had gained like 7 pounds, just like I don't even know how.
Are you like asking for 3 servings of wedding cake and like multiple wedding meals and all that? Just eating 10,000 calories a day?
Insane amounts of food. I mean, like 8 meals a day, like 8 legit meals a day, just eating. And then like an hour later, it'd be like, I could go for like half a meal. Like 2 hours later, go back for a full, like large pizza. And like, my body was in like full starvation though. So didn't love that for a few days. I just sat on the couch and just gorged myself.
Was it hard to go back after that many days off?
No, I was like itching for it.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't like being back in terms of just, I mean, I love seeing my family and my friends and stuff, but it just seemed like such a non-adventurous life, such a there was no wonder to the day.
Was that hard knowing that was going to soon become your life once you finished? Because then you had like 700 miles to think. Yeah.
That's all I thought about the rest of the time. Not in terms of like that's all I thought about, but like how it think about the end. It was like accomplishment, and then now what? Like in terms of can I just turn around and
yeah, do it a third time?
I'll just head back and see how far I make it. But yeah, it was more like I felt like I was hiking with Dawn that last 500 miles, and we were putting in like 10-hour days of like 36 to 42 miles, pretty consistently. In that time of year, it's not a lot of light, and so I was like feel like I had found my second wind, and I tried to finish as strong as I could.
Yeah,
and it felt like I was finally in my groove. I almost wanted to keep going. If my finances would have allowed, I probably would have just gone and done something else. Because I mean, that level of fitness, once you reach it, it's like it's so fleeting.
Yeah,
like it feels so precarious while you have it. Like, am I the fittest or the most worn down I've ever been? But then also like
thin line, yeah.
And then it's like the only way you get that though is by 10 hours a day for months.
Yeah.
Like, there's no other way I get to 42 miles a day and wake up not sore.
Yeah.
Like, that is something that I never even fathomed possible before this.
Yeah, not when you thought every thru hiker had to live in the woods for 20 years.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody was like crazy adventure racer type person.
Yeah. So what is it like on the last day, knowing that you're going to finish that day? Are you like trying to savor it? Are you like sad? How's it feeling?
I was stuck in two minds the whole time, where it's like, I didn't want to go fast because I didn't want it to end. Like, I literally didn't want it to end. Like, it was kind of like I sat at the 1 mile mark for like 2 hours. Because, like, I didn't want to just sit at the end. I didn't want it to be over. I said at the end, it's over. Like, I wanted it to not be over yet. So I would go between, like, wanting to go slow, and then I start to climb at a scissors crossing to go back up to the Sunrise Highway. And then I'm like, no, I want to push. I'm going to see how fast I can get at this thing now and see how fit I am. And so then I would do every climb, like, to exhaustion, where I was like pushing my body to like as fast as I could possibly go, and then get to the top and then just cruise. And it's like, do all the hard parts as hard as possible, and then all the easier parts I would just chill on.
Just go
slow. Kind of like the opposite of what most people do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
And yeah, I mean, I was just more. I couldn't believe I had accomplished it. It was something that was like so fulfilling for me. And then, like, that was a proof of concept for something bigger that I wanted to try. So it was just more about, like, stage one was complete. Like, getting to Canada was, like, the first part of stage one. And then stage one was complete. Okay, well, then let's see where I can push this in the future. Because I never even thought I'd be able to do what I did.
Totally. Okay, I want to hit on one more thing. You were one of the few people that was out there when the world changed the most it ever did in our lifetimes. So what was that like being, I guess, in the middle of nowhere, probably Arizona, when COVID happened? Because I dropped you off at the beginning of your Great Western loop, and then within 2 months, everything was totally different.
Yeah, it was, so I had heard, like, little things about it here and there, just about people on a cruise ship. And then I got picked up by a guy that had messaged me saying that, like, hey, you need a place to stay when you're in Flagstaff, let me know, I can pick you up. And so he came to pick me up. I stayed at his house, and we're sitting there watching, like, Colbert or something. And they're talking about, the people on the ship. And then he made a joke, something about, like, oh, we don't know where you've been. And then they were all joking. I just been in the woods for like 6 days before that.
Yeah.
And then I go out. I attempt to go around Humphreys Peak.
Yep.
That's it, right? Yeah. Go around Humphreys Peak. And the snow is just like mid-knee to like mid-thigh. And it's just powder, and I'm just like, well, this is miserable. And so I wasn't going to make it up and over and out of the snow. Once you're down out of it, it's easy. So I walked back to the road, hitched with some other guys, and then they were talking about it. And then I got into the hostel. They were saying this is the last night at the hostel. And I was like, what the heck is going on? And then so I got the next day, made it to the Grand Canyon. Everyone's talking about it. And all the food is gone. Like, all the jelly meat, all the bread, all the
mustard. You don't really know totally what's going on. You just know something weird is taken over.
Somebody had sent me, Joe Rogan did a podcast with some guy that was kind of talking about it before everybody was saying it. He was kind of saying, well, it's going to be a big deal. And I was like, man, it's going to be crazy. They're shutting down soccer games. Because for me, I had heard about it first through soccer, because they were closing down all these games. Those were some of the big events that really spread it everywhere across Europe. And so I was like, oh, they're going to close some games, and, they're going to close big events, but, life will just go on. And then within those 2 days, like, grocery stores were saying labels on how many things you could buy. And so I was like, all right, let me just get out of here. I'm almost done with the Arizona Trail. I go north. I hit a huge storm, turn around, and come back across the Grand Canyon, and then had started on the Great Western Leap towards Parker, Arizona. And we go to the bar in the restaurant. It's like the hotel area of the South Rim, because they say, "Hey, everyone come to the bar. This is the last time the bar is going to be open because we have to close it after this." So like the night, we didn't even people didn't know what was going on. So we were like, "Oh, it's the last night of the bar. Everyone go to the bar."
Yep.
And so, which is hilarious. Look at that. And so we went there, and then everything shut down the next day. And so we tried to hike out. They basically said, you know, you have to come get a permit. We went to try to get a permit. They had already closed down the ranger station by the time they told us to get the permit. We had walked over there. They were already like, "Oh, area's closed." And we talked to this ranger, and they were like, "What do we do?" And they're like, "You need to drive out of here." And we're like, "We walked here from Mexico." So like we don't have a car, and all the buses had shut down. So it was kind of like and they basically just said, just go do whatever you're gonna do. Just don't get hurt, get out.
Yeah.
And so we did one of the coolest things. I went to the Tonto Trail from the North Rim over to South Bass Trailhead.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Way on the remote side where like all those cactus are covering the trail, and it was an absolute beautiful time. Luckily, we got a bunch of snow the day before, so there were little pools of water everywhere on that notoriously not watered section.
Yep.
And then, I got to Seligman, Arizona, and like everything was way different all of a sudden. Like food was really rationed in that small town in terms of just like there's only a $1 General, and just like everything kind of.
Yep.
Everything kind of was, I was getting bits and pieces. I would go out for 3 days and then come back and everything has changed. I would go out for 3 days, 4 days, everything has changed. And I remember I was messaging you just being like, "What's going on? Like, is this something I need?" Because like, I was just singular focused. I'd been training for a year for this long thing. I was about to enter the what I think is one of the hardest.
And you saved for like 2 or 3 years for it too. Like it was a huge thing.
I mean like, it was all I did. Like that was my senior focus. I did 0 social activities that whole 2019 year. And so I was just like, nothing's going to stop me. What are the ways I can work around it?
Mm-hmm.
And then it just ended up becoming so much bigger than all that. And I was kind of just like getting blowback online, and I was so tired, and you just want to be like, and then just, this made me real sad. And then I was like, if I can't be on trail, either can all these people. Everyone else get on trail too.
Yeah.
Looking back on it, I was kind of like, I was probably in the safest place. I was in the middle of nowhere, and every town I crossed didn't even believe it existed. So, like, they were all still hanging out, doing everything. So,
I know, it's just like the craziest place to be when the like once in 100 years or something event happens. Like you're in the middle of nowhere.
Arizona.
Yeah, you don't want to ever be in Baghdad, no matter where.
Yeah, and then just accidentally walk into a copper mine. Just like the next day. Like it was just such a. And then my trip ended with me in Nothing, Arizona. Nothing, Arizona is just a broken down building and like some radio towers. And so I'm like camped behind this hill waiting for my dad to come pick me up then, because it was just like at that point I couldn't get shipments, I couldn't get stuff, all the mail was all backed up. I was using like $1 General socks that were wearing through like a day and a half. So it was like just hard to get stuff, and I was just kind of stressed out by all the situation. I didn't know what was going on. And all of a sudden I hear like a bunch of like muscle cars pull up, and then just like a million gunshots going off. There's like some people out there with like on like weapons, just like a whole bunch of guys with like unloading it into this like empty building as like a shooting target tough guy situation.
Good thing you didn't sleep there. Yeah.
Dude, I'm like crawling like this, like over the hill. I don't know which direction they're shooting, like what's going on. And I hit them over the hill, and then they stop, and I go, "Hey, there's people," because behind that little mound where they were shooting was a bunch of RVs. And God. I was like, "Hey," and they're like, "Well, there's RVs right behind you guys." And they're like, they all jumped in their car and set off. And I was just like, what is going on in the world? They just told me everything's shut down. There's groups of guys just driving around and shooting automatic weapons, like all over the place. Oh, I was like, give me hope for a minute. Like,
It's not the experience you thought you'd have for sure.
no. And then, yeah, then, as you know, it kind of, I don't know. It was, everything around me was completely closed, even the trails and the parks, and you couldn't even go anywhere. So you couldn't even go outside. They closed the national forest. So it was like
Well, the whole world changed, and the whole permitting system for a lot of these trails and recreation areas, especially in California, changed too. Like everything changed.
for the better.
Yeah,
The permit system in California is way better than it used to be. You used to have to wait a day going there.
Yeah, you'd have to get there the day before. Yeah.
So drive 5 hours to get there before closing the day before to get your permit. So you're really adding the whole day and a half to a lot of people's trips. Now with it online, it's awesome because you can just see what's available and you can go do it. And there's just not that barrier to entry all the time where me and you sometimes when we go on trips, we'll be like, randomly on a Tuesday, I'll be like, hey, Thursday night, we have this 36-hour window.
Yeah.
Let's go try to do something cool where we, leave at night, get there in the evening when a ranger station would be closed, and, hike in 15 miles, 10 miles in the night before.
Totally.
The trip work. And
we've done like the weirdest things. I still remember when we did the John Muir Trail and I was sitting on top of Iceberg Pass and you're like texting me like, are you feeling all these earthquakes? It's like the center's like 5 miles away or something. And I'm just like in the middle of the mountains and everyone's thinking that something's going to explode or it's going to be the big one or something. It's just like, we just end up in the weirdest places. Or when we went with Frank and climbed Alacha Peak. Yeah.
Yeah.
It had no water because it was under 6 feet of snow.
I remember you were breaking little ice puddles on the rocks so Frank could drink.
Yep.
And he had his natural crampons on with his claws and you were all walking up it. And
yeah. Man.
He was only like 5 weeks post surgery actually when that happened. He had that cyst removed.
And we camped in the worst spot. Yeah. We just like threw down because there was not going to get anything better. And there was snow for miles. Just gave up.
And then I woke up the next day and I look out my tent and your tent is just completely collapsed, wind stopping you. I'm like, hey, you all right? And you're like, yep, it's pretty windy. You didn't even have a pack. You just had like different rocks that you had to like weave your way up between.
I was like contorted around them just to try to sleep a little.
All I was thinking was, I think we walked a couple miles too far. We're a little too high. There's no more dirt.
Yeah, it should have been the sign when I think that was the trip where you lost your shoe in the meadow.
I post-holed it into a marsh and then pulled my foot up and my shoe was just gone and my shoe was right there and I was like, oh crap.
I might have a picture of you reaching down in a hole trying to fish out your shoe.
Yeah, it was pretty good down in there and I just remember just instantly being like, the shoe was just full of the murkiest, coldest water ever. And I was like, hey, cool, let's start the snow part. With your shoe completely soaked and no way to fire, no way to dry it out.
Nope.
That was a fun trip though.
Yeah. I mean, all our trips have been fun in unique ways, even when there's no trail and we think there's going to be a trail.
And it always involves snow somehow, whether it's just snowing on us unexpectedly or we walked into it knowingly.
I feel like we were consultants when we went up to Kennedy Meadows for all the thru-hikers to ask questions to at the outfitter there. Like, they're just like wondering if they can even make it. And you're like, I did this like a month earlier, a couple of years ago. You're going to be fine. Yeah,
and the whole thing of being told you needed an ice axe at that time of year, but you didn't need snow baskets on your poles. It was like, it literally couldn't be more the exact opposite. Like,
totally.
I remember seeing that group that was cursing themselves for not bringing their trekking pole baskets.
Yeah, the snow
they pulled and snapped off their poles all along the way.
Yep, but they all bought like $100 ice axes from the like 5th biggest ice axe dealer, according to unverified sources.
Yeah, exactly. According to those sources.
Yeah. All right, to wrap up, what do you think makes you want to go after all these huge things and keep getting bigger and bigger? Or maybe not bigger, but just like intense things like going to Europe and hiking and stuff like that. Stuff that people think are kind of impossible or out of the range of outcomes.
In terms of like a yo-yo and going bigger beyond that, it was kind of just like I was a good athlete, but I don't think I ever lived up to my potential with um just being a kid and being stupid and other things becoming more priority than the thing that I probably should have focused on more. Um, so I kind of wanted to prove to myself that I was a good athlete and that I had that mentality that I could push through the hardest things. And before I got too old, and I knew I thought I was, but until you actually do it, you could be just blowing smoke up your ass about like I think I'm so cool. And
Yep.
so I wanted to go out and do that and see. And like it was hard, but like we adapted. I let myself adapt. And then beyond that, like it's just see places like that are amazing. Like places that most people will never see. People that say it's too hard when it is hard. But that's why it's so rewarding. Whereas like if you go see Yosemite Valley by car, not that impressive to me. Is the valley impressive? Yes. Is the valley that impressive to go see? No. Because everyone can kind of go do it. It's so it's like something could be less spectacular, but more remote and harder to get to. And I find it just the remoteness is what I find fascinating. And like going to Europe, the Pyrenees was completely new, whole new mountain range, different continent I've never hiked on before. Um, the food system, the hut system, the just navigating town was somewhere that was harder to navigate than the trails because I didn't speak any of the languages. So you think like, oh, the trail will be the hard part. Oh, the trail is the easy part. That's the same language any where you go. Um, so that was just fascinating to me to have like a true cultural experience along with the trail was something that I had always wanted, and I think something that anything I do that will be, over a week in the future will be, I think, somewhere in either the Pyrenees or in the Alps or something because it's just a whole different experience. And I mean, who doesn't want to end the trail and just like go to, San Sebastian for 2 days? Or
Yeah.
like, and just the food is so good. And yeah, the adventure is, I just wanted to go do stuff that when I'm 75, I can say I actually didn't waste time. I don't want to be the guy that says I wish I would have. I'd rather be the guy that says like maybe I did a little too much, maybe it kind of affected a different part of my life in terms of career or personal or something like that. But I did it when I was physically able to do it the way I wanted. And then when I'm older, I can go slow and just go on some trails because I love it no matter what the mode is. Like fast, slow, hiking, car camping, doesn't matter to me. But if this is your time to do stuff while you have the body, then for me, it's like, let's see where this takes you. And who doesn't want a hobby that makes you stay in shape? Like every time,
Totally.
like it's something that like I have something to train for. I've been trying to train things my whole life, whether it was soccer or just soccer or this. It's something that keeps you on track. Something that like there's a goal to reach. I have to stay this fit even at a base level. So if I want to go on a trip, I can. Um,
And
that
I
and it's
think
like
that, yeah, I think the
it's like
draw of
my
through
meditation.
hiking in general is that it's sustainable over days, weeks, and months versus like running and stuff. It's like use everything you can over a few days and then you're spent down for months. When it's through hiking, I think that's why I love it too, is like you slowly work into this sustainable like 40 miles a day. That's pretty crazy that your body can do it, but you can do it every single day for months.
And that's what I'm more interested in is not like I'm not going to be the fastest, but I have pretty good resolve and I am a good enough athlete where I feel like my strength comes in like after the like 3,500, 4,000 mile mark, where
And you
other
just
people
round
start
into
to
shape.
Yeah, where people start to just wear down and they start to miss things, and like that's where I can stay focused,
Mhm.
and that's where I find the benefit for me, or like the most joy, is like in the type 2 way of joy, um, of like, this is when it gets hard. This is when that little devil on your shoulder says like, hey, you're a little sore, you're tired, don't do that. Like, oh, don't push so hard. It's always there, no matter how strong anybody thinks they are. There's always a voice saying like, hey, take it easy today. And then there's the other voice that I try to listen to that says like, don't listen to that, loser. And it's just trying to get to that. Like, what do you? I feel like you see when you do these crazy hard things and then you succeed, there's like confidence that comes from it,
Mhm.
and it bleeds into all other parts of your life. And for me, the easiest way to start that momentum would be something physical, because I know I can kind of, for lack of a better word, like suffer or like endure the hard times and come through them without quitting. Like, I would never quit on a hard day. I would only quit like after I regained my happiness, and then it'd be like, now I want to quit. But even then, I haven't really done that. But
Well, yeah, man, we covered like pretty much a lot of things. It could go for like 3 hours. It could be like a Joe Rogan podcast, but I think let you wrap it up here. But yeah,
yeah,
thanks for jumping on. This was fun. I didn't know all the little intricacies of the yo-yo, so I was especially interested because it's like a tale of two through hikes, and one is extremely intense, yet you still got almost a traditional through hike for the most part on the first one too.
yeah. One was all about friends and family, and then the other half was about like testing myself. And it was I thought it was a pretty good tactic for a realistic first through hike of that magnitude. So
Yeah, just a
yeah,
realistic million feet of gain, 5,500 miles, no big deal.
yeah. I mean, it's realistic. I
Yeah,
did it.
anyone should do the yo-yo for their first through hike.
Yeah, I mean, it's you gotta go for it. I mean, it was hard.
Yeah,
I mean, I struggled.
yeah.
So
I got one last question. How did permitting work for the yo-yo? How could you get a southbound and a northbound permit?
you can't. So what I had to do is I got my ones for the way north, and then on the way south, I couldn't get one because I was already in the system for the year.
Yep.
And so I kind of just put it off for that first 2 weeks until I got to trail days. And then I just like wandered over to the PCT channel. Like, here's the deal, man. Like, I can't get my other permit, and I'm trying to do like, what are you doing? Now, like, I already went north. I did that one. Can you like cancel it so I can reapply for a new one going south? And they're like, where are you going? I'm like, Singapore. And they were like, oh crap. And then so they're like, hey, call this person. So I called them, and then they deleted my name from the like the computer that year for the permits. And so they were able to just issue me a permit then.
Okay.
And so it was not. Remember, there was no outback option on the permit.
Yeah, like returning to destination from Campo.
Yeah. No, so they had to go in and like delete my name so then I could reapply.
Crazy. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining. This was awesome.
No problem.
All right. Thanks for listening to the episode. This, I think, was one of the more fun ones that I've done. I mean, they're all fun, but Jon just has a bunch of good stories. He's done a bunch of through hiking, backpacking, and even finding the outdoors through a trail school, and then kind of having that mystique of through hiking torn down into a manageable bite size, and then his first true through hike being a yo-yo of the PCT. Pretty wild. And then, of course, the sad story of how COVID personally impacted his through hike. Of course, sadness is all relative and variable, but just pretty crazy how everything in the world changed and has been changed since then while he was out in the middle of nowhere. So thank you all for listening. I will be back on Monday. Until then, stay elite, my friends.